Welcome back to the Liberating Generations podcast, where we talk about healing intergenerational trauma. I'm Regan Claire, and I am joined by my mother, Dr. Keesha Ewers. Hi, Mom.
Hey, it's so good to see your bright, smiling face.
As always, it's so good to see your bright, smiling face as well.
So, what's on your
We're not living in the same
down?
house as you anymore.
I know. And you're down at grad school now. And so I'm wondering what's on your heart these days. What do you want to talk about in this episode?
I would love to talk about gossip.
Mm.
Yeah, gossip has been weighing on my mind as of late. And as always, when something's weighing on my mind, I want to bring it to you and hear your guidance and your knowledge on the subject.
So, what's your experience of gossip?
Well, I think living at home for the last 9 months, living in your house with it just being the two of us, we had an agreement that we weren't going to gossip, right? That was, what is it called in Buddhism? What is gossip?
It's a negative karma.
Negative karma, exactly. So
Well, it's an afflictive state of being too. It creates bad karma.
creates bad karma, right? So that was my experience living back home, and I was actively thinking about, periods of my life where I have been uh, a part of gossip. And I've been doing a lot of work around kind of healing that karma and that energy around it, in my own spiritual practice process. So being back at school and being, back in this environment where uh, I just see gossip everywhere. And uh, the way that I'm kind of confronting it at this point in time is I sort of just leave the room anytime I see that it's happening. I take myself out of the equation. And what I know about gossip is it doesn't always have to be negative. I think as human beings, we have a desire to understand the world around us and understand human actions. And um, we like to see ourselves in other people in order to understand other people. That's a fairly common thing. So gossip can be, I think it can be seen in that way, but then there's that line that can so easily get crossed where gossip goes from simply trying to understand humanity to easily goes into colluding with another person about someone who's not there.
Well, I just looked at the definition of gossip. Do you want to hear it?
Please.
Casual or unconstrained conversation or reports about other people, typically involving details that are not confirmed as being true.
Mm,
So there's the exchange of information in order to understand life. And then there is the comparing of
mhm,
yourself to another to make yourself feel better or worse, actually, because
mm,
sometimes people gossip about someone that they feel is superior to them too.
mhm,
But all of it is centered around the ego. And
mhm,
so your question earlier, like, what is it in Buddhism? It's one of the 10 negative karmas. And the way that they divide it up, because the reason I started studying Buddhism several years ago is because I realized that there's no other group of people
mhm,
through time and space in our history that have done such a good job really tracking the mind.
mhm,
And they have done such a good job. And so just the systematized way of understanding mind and how it works, what motivates it, and then what the causes and
mhm,
conditions are when certain habits of mind you're engaged in. So they divide it up into body, speech, and mind. And so the 10 negative karmas of body, speech, and mind, body will be killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Those are three negative karmas that are in the body section. In the speech section, gossip is at the top of the list. Harsh words, divisiveness, and lying. And so if we were to take, the four negative karmas of speech and group them together, I think that a lot of times people think of divisiveness and lying and harsh words and gossip kind of in a similar category. And when you're involved in the energy of that, you walk away feeling like you need a shower.
Mhm.
And then the three negative karmas of mind are envy, which envy and greed and comparing yourself to other people isn't the same one. And then the next one is causing suffering or obstacles for another person because of your jealousy. And then another one is wrong view. And the way that they think about wrong view is that the things we chase after, thinking they're going to make us happy, always wind up not making us happy.
Yeah.
They that there's suffering attached to that.
Mhm.
So wrong view means that we have a lot of attachment. We're really have a lot of aversion to things that we think are going to cause us pain, and then we have a lot of ignorance when we think about really wanting to make things in life that we like permanent, which is impossible, and so it will create suffering.
Mhm.
So those are all negative karmas of mind. So the speech is where we're going to hang out today, right? Gossip, harsh words, divisiveness, and lying. So even though you're not maybe gossiping about another person, if it's a divisive thing that you've just inserted into a conversation, right?
Mhm.
That's a negative karma.
Can you give an example of that?
One that comes to my mind that has created a lot of divisiveness amongst people right now is just masking,
Mhm.
or vaccinations, right?
Mhm.
So when we fall into a really strongly held opinion and then we say anyone that doesn't agree with us is stupid,
Right.
right? It's going to create some negative karma because calling people stupid is harsh words, right? That goes into the heading of harsh words.
Yeah.
And then settling into the divisive thing, right? You can have your opinions. It's just, and I was working with someone the other day about this. His daughter came to him and said, COVID is just like it's just like the flu, dad. And he really got reactive to that. It was just like someone had pushed a button. And she said, I'm not living in fear about COVID, dad. And so I'm not going to wear a mask and I'm not going to get vaccinated. I'm not, blah, blah, blah. And he had his own opinions about this. And so it created the divisiveness between the two of them
Mhm.
and suffering as a result. And so he said, am I not allowed to have an opinion? And I said, no, that's not it. It's that you, you live in the space where you understand that every single person has the sovereign right to think their own way of thinking. And it's not
Mhm.
up to you to change their minds.
Mhm.
And so, or call them names or think they're stupid or all of those things, right? And so it's throwing, in the retreats that I run, I have a couple of rules about, we don't talk about politics in a retreat setting because it can be throwing a divisive topic. I prefer not to talk about religion too for the same reason,
Mhm.
because then what it does is it gets people into a contracted way of thinking and it will be rigid. And then it's really hard to get that healing going again when it's back in a rigid groove, right? When I'm trying to help them expand. So that's divisive. And then I'm sure at school you hear a lot of gossip.
Oh, yeah. So much. Yeah. And I I understand why, kind of goes back to gossip oftentimes happens because people are just trying to understand other people. And in a setting where there's so many different ways that humans are choosing to live their lives, there's a lot of misunderstanding that happens amongst people in, granted, a very stressful environment.
Mhm.
So that in and of itself automatically doesn't really bode well to people bringing their highest selves forward if they're not actively trying to bring their best selves forward. So we call it the lazy mind. I just can see it actively taking over in the setting where um just in the 5 weeks that I've been here, I've been in front of so many people having so many conversations where the conversation slips into talking about someone else, and I just have to stand there with my bubble around myself and not engage.
Mhm.
Uh, there was one instance where, and I called you that evening that this happened, where I did engage in talking about someone else, and I was really grappling with, was this gossip or was it just me sharing my experience with this person who had crossed boundaries with me? And I didn't feel good after I had explained this my situation. I knew, I was like, I just acted out of integrity because I brought someone else's name up to another person while they weren't there, and I don't feel good as a result of it. And literally 2 hours later, another person in my program did the exact same thing with me. And I called you after and I was like, "Okay, the universe just showed me a mirror immediately after the fact." And and I asked you, "So, how do I share my experience and set boundaries without making it gossip?" So I'd actually love for you to share
And
that
what did I
stuff.
say?
You said you don't share.
That's right.
You don't share it. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And, it's not, if you have a bad experience with another person, again, it's every single person's sovereign right to
Mhm.
be able to have their own fresh experience with other humans. And,
Yes.
right,
I love that. Can you say that again? Actually, I think that's so important. That's
yeah,
so important.
yeah, you're, um, I was out watering the yard today, and there's a lot of ivy. And I was having a discussion with a friend last week about how hard it is to pull ivy.
Mhm.
And they were saying, ivy grows in these cross hatches and it chokes trees and it takes over. And you have to, if you want to plant something new in a place where ivy's been allowed to run wild, you have to spend a lot of time pulling that out. And I
Mhm.
thought about that as a metaphor for life and human engagement with life and humans engaging with each other and other sentient beings is you bring your tangled ivy mess of
Mhm.
your imprinted uh, patterns that have been built since you were a child, and they affect how you perceive things. They've imprinted in your meaning making, your beliefs, and your behaviors.
Mhm.
And so if you want to change those and again become a skillful responder to life instead of reactionary from your child meanings, you have to
Mhm.
pull all that out of there. It takes a good amount of work to do that, to
Mhm.
create a nice clearing for something new to grow.
Yeah.
And so when you take what your experience of life or another person is from your tangled,
Mhm.
imprinted ivy, and you
Mhm.
put it in front of another person, they are not, you're depriving them of their sovereign right to have their own experience
Mhm.
without your stuff over the top of it.
Right.
So gossip oftentimes involves people talking about each other and
Mhm.
their experiences of others.
Mhm.
And what that does then is it puts their imprinted filters over the front of another person's view. That's
Mhm.
that's really negative karma, right?
Mhm.
To do that.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
to change your karma, there's this thing called the 10 virtues instead of the 10 negative karmas,
Mhm.
where you really engage in compassionate self-inquiry and self-confrontation with curiosity. Like, oh, I realize I'm having this experience of this person.
Mhm.
And yes, their behavior may be harmful. So I can have a boundary with them, but I can also have compassion for them, which means not harming them with my negative
Mhm.
speech.
Right.
Right. And so the 10, you know, the ways that you clear that ivy out of there for yourself so that you create a clearing is your actions, if they're motivated to protect life. Because you think about it, it is like ivy. When you're talking badly about another person, you're really choking them like ivy does to a tree. And they're not even there, right? But you're choking everybody's experience in the energy grid,
Mhm.
right? And so you want to have this motivation of protecting life. And then a second way of doing this is to practice generosity. So how can you generously think about and behave with this person? And
Mhm.
then you want to support the relationships of others. Everybody deserves to have friends. And so different people with different energy signatures will get together and they may not be your cup of tea. And
Yeah.
that's okay because you get to also have the sovereign right to not have people in your energy field,
Right.
right?
Well, what's so yeah, touching on that generosity component, I was walking I do laps around the school, outside with Sam, my dog Sammy, who comes to class with me, and we walked past this person that I had gossiped about a few weeks ago, and I overheard her saying something to someone else about, like, a little bit of her history and, like, her childhood history, and it was brief, it was so brief, and I walked past, and I just felt this surge of love for her and compassion that, of course, my experience with her was her acting out of a traumatized child version,
Right.
and so yeah, it was this really beautiful kind of it was this beautiful moment where I don't obviously the boundary is I don't need to be friends with this person, but I
Right.
can from afar offer her love.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And I think that's where people get confused is that forgiveness of harm done to us and reconciliation don't necessarily go hand in hand. And in fact, most of the time don't. So if a
Right.
person that has been a perpetrator of great harm in your life to you has not shown up and said, expressed remorse and regret
Mhm.
and shown that they're going to learn to behave in a more skillful way, then you have a boundary with them.
Right.
Yeah. And also, the people in your life that you've hurt get the
Mhm.
right to do the same.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've all behaved unskillfully with other people and hurt them too, whether we know it or not. Sometimes we knowingly have done that, and sometimes we've unknowingly done that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So to come back to our ways of navigating, the negative karma with some more positive is to speak clearly and honestly. So always like motivated from generosity. It's like Bambi the movie. If you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then speak in ways that bring people together, not
Mhm.
divide them.
Mhm.
And so if you're in a group of people that's starting to talk divisively, you can change the subject. You can actually say, can we come back to an arena where we can collaborate together about this thing that we're gathered here for anyway, without sounding like you're virtue signaling or
Right. Yeah.
or superior, right?
And that's a fine line
There
to
it is.
walk as well.
Yes.
That's
Right.
it's a hard one.
Right.
It
And
can
so
so
it's
easily come across as virtue signaling.
right. And so if someone's been gossiping about another person and is clearly in pain, you can offer empathy and say that must have hurt and felt very frustrating.
Right.
And then see if you can guide the conversation towards generating collaboration in the group, right?
Mhm.
And then if you can't, then you can move off, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know for me, I'm someone who I I process by talking. That's I process by talking through my emotions, talking through how I'm feeling. And so I do that with you. We
Mhm.
and I don't do that with I used to do that with all of my friends. And that's how I chose. I mean, it was looking back in reflection, absolutely gossip.
Mhm.
And so now I don't do that with just anyone. I would literally just reserve that for you or a therapist.
Mhm.
So what would your advice to our listeners be in that regard?
Just what you said.
Mm.
Yeah. If you need to blow off steam, then recognize that's what you need to do. But you never, one of the things about like anger is not bad if it is a catalyst for creating change, but you don't want to point your anger at people.
Mm.
So there's a very big difference between having anger motivate and
Mhm.
witnessing it and using it as a path for growth and wisdom, and one that you're pointing it at and putting it on people.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think, and I want to say that the reason why you're someone I talk to about this stuff is because I know that you're not going to collude with me.
Right.
That I can think of past versions of myself that would talk through an experience with someone, a friend, with the intention of wanting them to be on my side, wanting them to collude with me because in the
To say,
moment,
oh, what a jerk. I can't
yeah,
believe they did that. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah. And it feeling really good in the moment, but afterward, just like you said, wanting to take a shower and wash
Mhm.
that ick off. And so now I feel like I have a lot better discernment of like I know if I were to bring something up with particular people in my life, it would absolutely turn into collusion. And I just choose not to really even go there anymore. Um, but I mean, a therapist has the training to not, I mean, a good therapist shouldn't be
Yeah.
colluding with you. They should be holding your feet to the fire and raising you to a higher level of consciousness.
Right. Right. And that's what, our agreement with each other is too. So,
Right.
and there are things that I think people, that part of the things that I teach are what is not empathy and what is empathy. And
Mhm.
I think oftentimes colluding is considered an empathetic response,
Yeah.
right? And it's not.
No.
So it might make the person that you're colluding with feel lovely and for a little while, but at the end of the day, it doesn't help them expand their view. They stay in wrong view.
Mhm.
So when you think about it, when gossip hurts, and this is really important, it's because there's a false sense of self and ego
Mhm.
whose image has just gotten messed with.
Mm.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so this is very dependent on Ennea-type, by the way. And so for people that want to know more about this, they can listen to our 2 Enneagram podcast episodes. But the masks that you wear that you want people to see you as, it's like there's a screen and you project images up there and you buy everyone popcorn and you say, look up there. That's what I want you to watch, not here. Right. Kind of like the
Mhm.
Wizard of Oz, the little
Yes.
guy behind the curtain. We don't look at him. I'm
Yeah.
the great and powerful Oz, right?
Mhm.
And so when gossip will be, there are two things that can happen. Someone saw behind your mask and saw that it wasn't real,
Mhm.
your authentic self, and is calling it out.
Mm.
Or they're projecting their own stuff onto you. Either way, it's no harm to you
Mhm.
because your true nature is unstainable, unhurtable, unassailable.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter what other people think about you, say about you. If you just move through the world with the motivation of the things that we just talked about, generosity, loving kindness, wisdom, understanding that there are 8 billion ways of being a person, and then
Mhm.
they're all different, and yet they have a lot of similarities. And
Mhm.
so, it's just okay, you know, my way is my way, and then there are these other ways, and sometimes those energy signatures do not get along together, and that's okay. It's like 2 magnets, right? So, it's it's allowing and not trying to manipulate. So our Ennea-type, the Ennea-type 2, we're emotional manipulators if we're unaware. We'll do anything to make a person like us. We're not okay with someone seeing us as anything less than good.
Right.
And when you notice that, like someone says that you're not good in whatever way that, shows up, you're deceitful, you're whatever,
Mhm.
then that actually doesn't really mean anything about you. But your Ennea type will be upset. The false self will be really upset. And so
Mhm.
you get to just kind of, I was walking down the mountain last week and I had some sorrow about a loss and that I had just experienced. I think it was about 4 weeks ago. And I remember going, oh yeah, this is really just impermanence. And as I kind of looked down the mountain and I witnessed like all the people in the world that were also feeling sorrow about the loss, people that they had
Mhm.
lost to death, to illness, to broken relationships, whatever it was. And I started breathing in, like taking in all the sorrow of all beings in the world, and then breathing out loving compassion. And I walked down the mountain with that, and it was so beautiful. And it brought me into this felt unification of humanity
Mhm.
instead of my little story with my little two that doesn't like loss of connection, right? So my Ennea type wasn't allowed to run the show anymore. My luminous nature was the one that just witnessed all of it and then just practiced, right? And so gossip really can't hurt you. It's just your image, it's your reputation. None of that stuff is actually permanent.
Right.
It's going to fluctuate just like the tides in the ocean do. And
Mm.
you trying to control it is a big waste of energy and it'll cause a lot of suffering.
Mm.
So the lesson is, of course, is to realize how badly it hurts when you're a recipient of
Right.
divisive speech, gossip, lying, any of those things,
Mhm.
and then engage in the positive karmas of generosity, protecting life, bringing people together, like, and just do you, work on that and let the rest go. Because at the end of the day, no one can harm you,
Yeah.
not the
Beautiful.
real you.
Right.
Just they can attack your Ennea type, which is actually good for you.
Your ego.
Good for us to get that attacked.
Mhm.
We get to witness it and go, wait a second. I
Right.
notice I'm really upset about not being seen as good. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Let me go pick up the little kid part of me that decided that that was important and let her know that I see her. She's beautiful. She's a gift to the world. And
Mhm.
actually, it's important for her not to deprive other people of their own opinions,
Exactly.
right? That
Manipulation.
emotional manipulation is important not to engage in, just like gossip,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Reality is you're not gonna be for everyone, and that's
Nope.
okay.
I mean, let's face it, we're all a lot to someone.
And everyone's not for us.
Exactly.
It's okay. Yeah, and
Exactly.
all we can do is keep our side of the street clean and
Yep.
not engage in gossip, um, and not judge others who choose to engage in gossip.
Exactly. Yeah. It's important not to also become a virtue signaler.
Right, exactly.
Feel superior.
Feel superior because you're not, yeah. At the end of the day, it's all just emptiness, so whatever.
All right. That's
Yeah.
right. But and then giving your little child self compassion for how, some comfort and some love and really your healing attachment when being to yourself
Mm,
when you give her love for when people don't like her,
mhm.
right?
Yeah,
You let her know that you're there for her 24/7. She's not a lot for you. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about gossip?
Stay tuned. I mean uh, the process of exploring it,
hmm
yeah.
I would like to lay out a challenge for our listeners that start with 24 hours of just witnessing your
Mhm.
thoughts as well as
Yeah.
your speech. Because if it's in your thoughts, you may as well be speaking it. So just notice your thoughts and your speech about how you're thinking about other people, what you're thinking about them.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if it's a corporation or a politician or a religious leader or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Someone you don't know, notice your train of thought. And I would just encourage you to practice with every single thought. You can always change the train track by hauling back on that little lever, right? And instead of going downhill to the ruts that you generally take, maybe take a different trail, different track, and lay new track in your mind about how you think
Mhm.
with every thought. And then take it from 24 hours and you're just doing a gossip detox.
Yes.
See if you can do a week.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And notice how the people you surround yourself with maybe influence your
Yes.
desire to gossip versus not gossip.
And what you watch on your phone or computer or
Yes.
whatever, like I know your dad loved Seinfeld,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I remember watching it with him a couple of times and going, these guys are mean. That all they do is talk bad about everything, and I just wouldn't even be in the room anymore with it. And
Yeah.
to notice like what it is
What
that
are you
you
absorbing?
yeah, yeah. What are you filling your mind with? And when I pointed it out to him, he was so sweet and he said, "You're right. It is mean," and then stopped watching it. And, it was just so mean. And so
Yeah.
what are you putting in your head? Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Love that. I will definitely be participating in that homework assignment.
Yes. Me too. All right, everyone. Until next time, be well.